start, guys. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. Today is our third session about the Aurora app. And let me introduce Lars Lawrence. Hi, Lars. He's the person who has developed the app. He is our software developer. So he's more than willing to share with all of you all the challenges, let's say challenges, we have faces during the development of the app. So please take advantage of this session to ask your questions, not only about Aurora, but also in a wider spectrum. I mean, he's expert on app development. So any question you may have, probably Lars can help you or can give you a hint on how to face this kind of question you have. So Lars, it's your turn. So when you want it, you can start. I think that you can share your screen.
Perfect. Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. I hope everybody can hear me. I guess so. I don't have permission to share my screen, though. I need to have that.
Try it now.
Tienes que hacer.
Yes, looks better. All right. There we go. Just get set up here. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for having me today as your guest lecture. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about the Aurora app, and just a slight correction maybe to what Anna said. I didn't develop the app for iOS and Android. We are working with professional developers, but I do have development experience. And in case you've seen the Aurora dashboard that I developed myself, and obviously I'm coordinating the app development efforts. So just a bit about myself. My name is Lars Lawrence. I'm living in Germany, and my background is in science communication and bionics. I prefer working with Python and JavaScript, so I'm definitely more on the research side with Python, or web development with JavaScript. And currently working at InPsycho, the Institute for Science and Innovation Communication, who is one of the partners on the Aurora project. And within Aurora, I'm mostly responsible for work package 2. That is the work package that is focusing on developing the app. And yeah, that's mostly what I'm doing, coordinating between the partners of the project, the users of the app, what their expectations are in the app, what features we need, and then basically bringing it all together and forming a technical requirement for our developers to implement. So yeah, and besides that, also developed the Aurora website and the interactive dashboard. So first of all, about features of the app. I'm gonna keep this short so that we have enough time for questions. But if you have any questions in between, just let me know. So one of the most important features for us was definitely that users have an account. Seems trivial, but that can already be a first challenge depending on which route you go developing your app. For us, all of this is run on, I can have some technical details if you're interested in that at the end, Google Firebase, which is kind of a one-stop shop for all sorts of things that you can have in your app. It offers lots of convenient features. And so we are offering accounts that you can log into with your Apple ID, with your Google account, or simply with password, and email address. And after a user creates their account, we just ask them some simple information about themselves to kind of create a demographic profile, such as gender, year of birth, and most importantly, actually, which demo site they're attributed to, because we have 5 different countries in the Aurora project that are involved. So 5 different demo sites, with Madrid being obviously one of them. And that's what we need to know about the users, because we tailor their calculations of carbon footprint specifically to their location. So about those entries, we obviously focused on giving users a convenient way to input their carbon usage, their energy usage, and then get a carbon footprint and how much energy they're using. So for that, we are offering 3 different main categories. That's electricity, transportation, and heating. And for all of those consumptions, users can then enter specific details, such as how many kilowatt hours they've used up on electricity in this particular time frame. And the calculations for that, so obviously the user doesn't know their carbon footprint. That's what we are here to tell them. They would know their kilowatt hour usage, probably from their energy provider's bill. So they input that, and we are actually working on an update that has additional options like solar panels and so on. But they can select basically the source, whether it's a green electricity provider or the national grid. And based on this information, we send all this information to our server, which is said basically Firebase. And then we have some constants basically to calculate how much carbon emissions are equivalent to the kilowatt hour usage. And that gets then stored in Firebase and then loaded by the client, so that the user can then see I've used, I don't know, 200 kilograms CO2, for example. And the same applies to labels. So the labeling system in Aurora is basically like home appliances also have these kinds of labels, which range from A+ to G. And depending on the history, like how much a user has used energy or produced carbon over the course of a year, they are attributed as a particular label. And obviously the goal of the project is to incentivize users to reduce their label. So yeah, that's actually how the labeling system looks. And in addition to that, we currently have a solar power panel tab, which is only available for users within one of the 5 Aurora demo sites. There's also an option to specify that you're from anywhere else in the EU. We can't provide that information for that, because the idea is that solar panels will be installed in the local demo sites, and then users can do micro investments to help reduce their carbon footprint. So this is being worked on in the project, but for the time being, kind of as an estimate, so people can already get an idea how far their planned investments is likely going to take them. We have a calculator that is integrating with a tool that was developed by the European Commission or maybe another project or something. But that basically calculates with specifications that we know of the panels that are going to be set up, and how much energy can be produced with that. And then users can basically say, I plan on investing 100 euros, and the return of that will be, as shown in the screenshot here, about 160 kilowatt hours for that year if you invest in this demo site. Another important section in any app is settings. We try to keep this to a minimum because it's not really, it's mandatory for users to have some control, but it also gets exhausting if you have a bunch of settings to go through. Some are just unavoidable, like editing your profile. So imagine you're married, you want to change your name. Obviously, we have an option for that. Or there's also information about your household. If you move, then maybe your energy profile of your home changes. So all of that can be adjusted here. Also changing the email, changing the password, scheduling reminders for your bills. So if you get your electricity bill every month, you can have the app remind you about that. And very important for GDPR reasons is downloading your data and deleting your account. So GDPR requires that people are in full control of their data, and this should always be paramount. For one, data security, and second, control over personal data. And that allows people to download all the data that we have about them and also delete their account. So that will be completely wiped out from our servers. And lastly, a support section. So if someone's having issues with the app, wants to provide feedback or anything, they can click on a button in the app that they taken out of the app to our website, where we have a form where they can submit a ticket to us about whatever they're experiencing. So just briefly on how we actually got here. So the app obviously didn't always look like this. We went through quite a few iterations with early versions of the app within the consortium, basically getting feedback along the way. And we also reeled in external testers to help us verify that the app's working, that the features are working, that the UI, the user experience, that's clear. And to even get to that point, before we start developing the app even, we had surveys where we kind of probed what users are looking for in an app like that, because we obviously had the idea within the consortium, we had the idea as the project, but we wanted to verify that the thoughts that we have as the people within the consortium constantly thinking about this app match up as best as they can with the expectations of our potential future users, because there's no use in creating an app for ourselves, for people within the consortium. We want to create an app that's actually used by people. So yeah, that led us to making a few decisions on the architecture of the app, actually. And here's some technical details about that. So the app is available for iOS and Android, which is at this point really the only two platforms available. There's maybe some very niche products, but to be honest, those are the only ones you really need to worry about. And we've decided to build a native app. So maybe you've heard this term before, but there's basically two ways. There's a bunch of ways, but two main ways you can go about developing an app. You can either do this natively, which means that it's using the similar UI, so user interface elements that you're already familiar with from just using your phone. Or you can go and make this a basically web app, so that it is completely agnostic to the platform. It's basically just a browser that opens and your app's there. You just won't see the address bar or anything, but that's the two main things. The upside of native apps is that they usually feel a bit better to use. They use all the stuff that the operating systems like iOS or Android have on board. But they are also harder to maintain, because you will have two completely separate apps, because obviously iOS code and Android code doesn't mix very well. While with a web app, it can feel sluggish, and it doesn't really have this native system feel to it. But it will be easier to maintain, because you basically just have one code base to worry about. For the backend, in this case, we obviously just need to store the data also somewhere. We can just have it locally on users' devices. We are, as I mentioned, using Google Firebase. This is a very powerful tool, has a bunch of different features, and two of the main features we're using are Cloud Firestore, which is a database that basically holds all of the data that we that we are holding about the user. And it has what they're calling cloud functions. And that's basically a program that is run on certain conditions. So for example, this would be calculating the usage of the carbon emission usage based on the inputted kilowatt hours. So a user creates a new entry, provides the kilowatt hours, then this little program is triggered on the server, calculates what the corresponding emissions is, and writes that to Firestore, so the database, and then the user can view this data in their app. If you're curious on how this all works, feel free to just check out our GitHub repository. It's completely open source. And we are also working on, well, a big update to the app, actually, which will introduce some requested features about new emissions that can be tracked and some changes. And we are also we already kind of soft launched this already. There's a dashboard that shows stats about the app. So an aggregate, for example, how many users there are in Madrid and how much carbon emissions they've produced over time. That's already live, and we've actually added a basically full web app to this, so that the entire app and all its functionality will also be available in the browser for anyone with who doesn't want to download it, who wants to use it on their desktop or whatever. That's coming up with a next update, and that's the part that I developed definitely. So I can probably tell you more about developing the web app than actual questions about iOS and Android, although I'll try to my best to answer any that you might have. And speaking of that, that's about it actually, just on the app. And if you don't have it already, can only encourage you to go download it. It's available right now, iOS and Android on their respective stores. And yeah, I got this thank you slide, but I might as well just leave this one up.
Okay, thank you very much, Lars. Well, let's start with the question. If someone wants to ask Lars, please introduce yourself, just your name, and feel free to ask. If someone is afraid of talking in English, don't be afraid. Just speak in Spanish, and I'll try to do my best to translate your question to Lars. Okay, don't worry about that. So please, the first one. I think that you need to open your microphone. Venga.
Sobre la pregunta que hice el otro día relacionada con las librerías y la filtración de datos que podía haber con algunas librerías que se utilizan para crear aplicaciones móviles, que no me supieron dar una respuesta concreta el último día para ver si las tenía un poco más de conocimiento sobre esto, si habían testeado alguna forma de aplicación.
Lars, ¿cuál es tu nombre?
Daniel.
Lars, Danny is our student, and he's asking us about the libraries and the problems with some libraries that some apps are using, including Aurora, and if these libraries are tested about the data protection, because it seems that sometimes we use libraries that can somehow be transferring data to others without people knowing this. You know about this, or
yeah, I can broadly respond to that, I guess. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting question, especially I don't know if this is coming from that, but there was a recent uproar in the open source community because you probably heard of Linux, and there was someone who did a very, very clever thing, also very malicious, where they injected malicious code that would basically provide a backdoor into Linux, which is probably the largest and most well-maintained open source project in the world. And if that happens with a project like that, there's obviously concerns with smaller libraries that maybe just have one or two maintainers. So obviously the reputation of a library, if you're using one, is very important. And it has to be checked in which places it's used. So for example, we are using the app on device. So if you have the app on your device, then the data can't really go anywhere unless you tell the device to send the data somewhere. And you can actually monitor this in development because you will have an IDE, an integrated development environment, where you are using a simulated version of the device, be it iOS or Android, and that will show you exactly all that network traffic that is coming in and out of the device. And if there's anything suspicious going on there, then obviously you would, as a developer, have to catch that, but the tool will definitely tell you. And there's not really a way to hide that. In our case, the connections that we are expecting are to Google Firebase, of course, and probably the signature servers from Apple. So apps check whether the signature is valid, that it's not been revoked or reported as malicious or whatever. So that we'll probably check that also. But most of the traffic that's going out and in is to Google services. So whether you then trust Google on this is obviously a separate topic. We've come around this by adding this clearly to our terms of services and our privacy policy. We had legal experts at UPM review how Google is handling the data, and it's compliant with GDPR as long as people consent to have their data processed in this way. Now, that being said, we are also not processing any data that's considered highly sensitive. So it's people's names, probably their email address is the most sensitive data that we have. If you're building an app that is like in a medical field where you have users input medical records or things like ethnicity or stuff like that, that's a whole different set. And you would have to be very careful on first why you're collecting this data and how you are handling this. Does this kind of answer the question? I mean, it's not directly at the libraries because there's a bunch of them that we're using, but basically it's kind of in the responsibility of the developer to not use something shady and to verify that only the stuff that you are expecting to happen is actually happening.
Are you happier now?
Yeah.
I have a new question. Have you said that during the development phase, you can check the libraries and the traffic if there is something malicious? How did you do that? I mean, do you need a specific software, or is how did you manage that?
Yeah, so it's not direct. It's not as simple as that. It just straight up tells you, hey, there's something malicious going on. But it's more like looking that only the things that you're expecting are actually happening. So, for example, with network traffic, like if a library is malicious and doing some random stuff that's kept on the device, it could impact performance, like make the app slow. That is definitely a concern for the user experience. It's not so much as a concern for data privacy, as long as the data isn't sent anywhere and kept on the user's device. So you would do that by using the development tools that are supplied by either Google or Apple. So for Apple, that would be Xcode. The downside to that is, a typical Apple fashion, you will need a Mac to run Xcode and develop iOS apps. So they're always saying, hey, it's just a 100 euro fee to get a developer account. Well, that's true. You also need to pay like 2,000 to get a Mac if you don't have one already. On Android, it's more open, as you'd expect from Google. And you can download Android Studio completely free. Xcode is also free. For both of them, you just have to pay if you're actually publishing anything to the app stores. But if you want to develop it for yourself, it's all free. And those tools provide an emulator. So that basically you will have a window in your IDE, in the program, in the development environment, where a local version of Android or iOS is basically running on a simulated device. So you can really just imagine a window that on your computer that looks like your phone screen, and that your app can then run on this. And this is obviously very convenient because during development, while you're writing lines of code, while you're trying different things, you don't want to go through the process of compiling the app, downloading it to your phone, installing it there, testing things, seeing it doesn't work, and then this is a long process. So having it all on the same device is great. And that also integrates, that's why it's called IDE. The I stands for Integrate Development Environment with the rest. So you will have full overview of the memory, the working memory, the RAM that the program's using, about how much the CPU, so the processor is being taxed, how the network adapters are working, and all this kind of stuff. And it will tell you all this information. Whether you then go out of your way to actually look at this and use all of those debugging tools is responsibility of the developer.
Okay. More question. Yes, please.
Hi Lars, my name is Mateo, and my question was if the Aurora team is willing to add more type of information because we have heating, electricity, and transportation. And I was wondering if in the future there are going to be more types of consumptions.
Yeah, thanks. That is definitely a topic that was of hot discussion within the consortium. So I think one of the main things that is not currently captured is food and food consumptions. But we talked about this at length, and it is basically an entire project in itself, probably more than that, because it's one thing to kind of calculate, like if you have, I don't know, a pack of cheese, and then try to find out what the carbon footprint of that is. It's really, really difficult because you will have the packaging, you will have the entire manufacturing process, like where does the milk come from? Was it shipped across the globe? How did it ferment into cheese? Was there any like substances added to the cheese to make it ferment faster? What's the process of getting those substances? How they were transported? A ton of stuff. And even if you're just being like, I don't know, roundabout guessing it, how do you actually reward people who like buy local products? And then is local cheese better? Okay, yeah, probably, but local meat, what's the difference between that and meat that's not local? So lots and lots of different variables, and way, way more than for the other three categories. So for this stage, we've decided to not include that sort of information.
I just want to take Mateo's question and say that at some point Lars is angry with us because we are requesting more and more features and more features and more features. So, well, I would like Lars just give some kind of type of advice to these guys regarding the planification of an app that in the future will need to add more features, because this implies to modify some parts of the previous work that you have done. So which kind of advice you will say you will give to someone that thinks in an app just to test a first core base of features, and if the app is working and has acceptability, this team wants to update and make the app greater?
Yeah, that's actually a very, very interesting point, and something that I can't easily answer, because there's a very delicate balance you have to strike. So on the one hand, you want to design your app in a way that it's easily extensible. So in our case, we can add like the app. It's not like we have to start over from scratch if we want to add a new category. Like adding a new category would require less touching up all of the existing stuff than changing an existing category because it would be something new that's kind of on top. However, when you're diving into your first efforts of developing an app or just trying something out, one of the pitfalls is premature optimization. So you will see, for one, a bunch of people online who are saying, like, you have your app, it's working, you're happy, and then you look stuff up online or you ask someone who's experienced for feedback, and they're saying, you're doing this in a way that is not optimized. Like, I don't know, maybe you're doing 2 requests to your database for whatever reason because you didn't know any better, and you could go away with 1. That's an optimization that you can make, but it won't really help you in this immediate reward feeling. So if you're trying to dip your feet into app development, don't worry too much about initial optimizations, because you will then just sit there and optimize like this one function that does something really boring, but something important for your app. And you optimize that for 5 hours, and then you're out of steam, and the rest of your app suffers under that. So it's a balance. You don't want to like just build a mess that you can't figure out later on, but you also don't want to spend all of your efforts on tiny little details that that maybe no one except you actually notices.
Okay, can you please stop sharing your screen just to see you larger
Sure.
on our screen? Okay. Anyone has any questions? Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mario, and this is a question. Is the app Aurora getting the amount of users that you expected?
Yeah, currently we're not. We are a bit behind the curve, I think. So that's basically what we are trying to address as a consortium. So in my position, obviously, managing and being this intermediary between like the non-technical people or the people that are not directly involved with actually developing the app, and the developers, I obviously have a stake in both. Like, I want this app to have as many users as possible. And I also want to deliver a good technical product. Like on the developer side, they pretty much, like, obviously they do care because it's an interesting project. But if you are just hiring a developer, they probably don't care too much about how many people are using your app. Unless it's too many, then they will tell you that they need more resources to make it scale better. But in terms of the users that we currently have, I think it's a good base. So we have, especially in Madrid, I think, is like most of our users are currently coming from, or Madrid is the largest demo site. I don't know if it's most of our users. But yeah, and I think the best thing to do in this case is then an exchange between the different demo sites. So that another demo site who doesn't have as many users or who are struggling to recruit users can exchange ideas with another demo site like Madrid, who is having more users, on what the strategies are. And that's obviously something in general with developing an app that you have to be cautious about, that you have to be in the back of your mind. I mean, as long as you're kind of just interested in it, I would say don't worry about the marketability of your app. Don't worry about if anyone's ever going to use it. Just make it a fun project for yourself. I can probably guarantee you that the first things that you're building and the first things that you're toying around with are things like to-do lists or, I don't know, just writing hello world on a screen. And that's all very, very, very good for learning. and don't worry about and make it like this giant project. Like I want to revolutionize the world with the first app I've ever developed. That happened to probably nobody ever, and it's all building up from there. So that said, though, once you are at the stage where you're comfortable, like I know my systems, I know how to build an app. If someone asked me to build a to-do app, I could have that out in a couple of days. And you're now looking for an idea for an app, marketability is one of the important factors. Like you want to ensure that there's a market for that. Now that kind of fell flat with ours because obviously there's a market for like saving energy. And also this is the entire goal of the project. And we're not trying to make money with that, with the app directly at least. And so the one remaining step is marketing the app. So how do we actually engage users? And one of the key things, obviously, is a good technical product. So if users download the app, it's working as they're expecting. Like nothing deletes an app faster than downloading it, experiencing issues. And if the users weren't like super invested and waiting their entire lives for this particular app, they're going to throw it out in the garbage immediately and never look at it again. We have that. We have a good base. The app's working. Like there's definitely some things like you want to enter a specific consumption, which is not currently offered, but it's not like the app is not working or anything. But that's only halfway there. The other part is then getting people interested in the app and continuing their engagement. And especially for the last one, I think one of the key features that we're currently developing in collaboration with UPM is recommendations, so that users will get recommendations about their energy usage. Like imagine someone is driving 5 kilometers by car to work every day. And the app will then pick up on that and provide a recommendation to the user. Hey, if you thought about using public transport, you can save like this much energy with it. And that's probably what can help keep people engaged. But yeah, to first approach them, it's social media, it's emails, newsletters, the website, local events. All this stuff is really, really important to get people hooked and then ensure that they stay.
As I commented last day, this is a citizen science project, and all citizen science projects face the same challenge to keep people engaged and to grow the community, because all projects are based on people that are giving their time and their data for free. So it's difficult to engage with people when you are doing things in a volunteer basis. That's the point. But it's not only for Aurora, it's a common challenge for all projects that are dealing with citizen science. Obviously, there are some of them, like those driving by National Geographic or NASA or this kind of big organizations, but they are supported by a good marketing, a very broad marketing, that because they have a mark, they have a National Geographic, and you know, and you can engage easier with people. But well, today I think that we have gotten 600 people using the app right now. So cross our fingers to get the 1,000 by the end of this month. And from then we will, as Lars said, combining modification or improvements in the app together, marketing and more actions devoted to marketing. Let's try to grow the community.
Okay.
Thank you. More questions? No more questions? Yes, please. Mateo again.
Yeah, it's me again. Why would someone make their app open source like Aurora?
Yeah, I mean, there's various reasons for that. Our main driving factor to do that is because we are a project funded by money from the European Commission. So that means that the taxpayers' money all across different European member states basically was there's some portion of like the tax you pay on products you buy, on the salary you get. I don't know how it perfectly constitutes it, but some of that ends up with the European Commission, and then some of that is funneled into those research projects or into those projects that they're funding. And so we feel like, and that's actually a requirement, it's not just because we feel that way, it's actually the European Union requires it, that we should be open and transparent about what we are doing with that money. And one of the key things in that is open communication. So that the app that we're developing is funded partially by that money. And we want to show people, hey, this is exactly how we're doing it. So that's one part of it. The other part actually goes back to sorry, was it Daniela, I think, who had this question about the libraries. So that is another part of open source being a benefit, is that other people can scrutinize your code. Like they can say, hey, you're doing this right there, which is insecure. You shouldn't be doing this. It's unlikely that this is gonna happen too much with our app because most of our user base isn't that technical. There haven't been any people like developers engaging outside of the consortium with our repository, and that they were saying like they forked our code or reported issues in GitHub or anything. But if you have a larger app and you get more attention, maybe you do something that's unusual, like on the technical terms, our app isn't breaking new ground. It's solid technically, but it's not like there's innovative technology in there that hasn't ever been seen before. But if you do that, then having an open source can really help, because if it's just you developing it, then you might really benefit from someone else looking over your code. In terms of commercial apps, typically they aren't open source. Like stuff like, I don't know, the Google algorithm or, I don't know, YouTube recommendation system, whatever. You won't ever see those. I mean, I'm not going to say ever. Twitter, actually, when Elon Musk bought this social media platform, I guess, is it still? They revealed a big part of their recommendation algorithm, actually, which took everybody by surprise. But besides of those rare occasions, they're not going to reveal this. It's basically a trade secret because they have this secret source and probably nowadays something AI powered, and they don't want the competition to know how they're recommending posts and search results and so on. But we don't worry about that. We don't think we have like market-changing technology. We just want to give back to the community with that.
More questions? No, I have another one. I just want to know how many time have you required to develop the app? How much effort have you devoted to the app?
Oh, that's probably a question that Alex could answer more easily. It's hard to tell. Maybe I can answer it a bit more generally in the sense of the starting phase of the app, like it's basically kind of counterintuitive. At the beginning, you pour in a lot of effort and you see not a whole lot changing, like just getting things up and running. Like, for example, there's always, when you're developing an app or anything, there's going to be features and certain systems that you need to implement that you feel are exciting, and some that are just boring, but you still need to do that. For example, there is login functionality. Like, who is excited about login anymore? I don't think really anyone. You need to implement that people can register an account, that they can log in, that they can change their password, change their email. And if you're not bored by this point, then maybe that's something that you should pursue, but it's not exciting to me. What I find exciting is, like, I don't know, figuring out how to display the data, how to improve the user experience. Like, if they press this button, should it then pull up the sheet directly? Should there be an additional option? In which way do we order the items? This kind of stuff I find much more exciting. But that's only later on in the development process. So the further along you go, the deeper you're actually nested into those quality of life features, because you will have most of the quote unquote boring stuff like login and handling user account. You connect to your backend out of the way. So if you now want to, I don't know, you collect your user's first name, last name, date of birth, and now you decide you want to implement, I don't know, a setting where they can select a pet. And you think about how you implement the UI, you think about what attributes of the pet you want to collect, maybe the name, like if it's dog or cat, what breed it is, that kind of stuff. So that is probably more interesting to you than figuring out all of the stuff that you have actually already figured out, like how you store the data in the backend, how you retrieve it from there, how you display it in your app. That process is virtually identical to how you're handling the first last name that you've already implemented. But now you can focus on this new feature because there's a bit of work still to implement that, but just go copy paste that from the other part and it's fine. You solve this problem already. So I don't know, not directly answering your question, getting a bit off on a tangent here, but the efforts do definitely reduce. Like there's basically a hill at the beginning. You don't know, like you start very high with lots of efforts to just get something running, and then it gets more as a process. Also, if you have a feedback loop like we do with the consortium, we can't just go and, like, if Anna says, I mean, obviously the special place as coordinator, but if she just says, I want the app to now include this feature, it's not wise to just do that unless the consortium kind of agrees, because maybe there's different opinions and people say, yeah, this feature, but slightly different, or we don't need this feature at all. So we have basically, I don't know, imagine a big company and you have all of the people in the company that can actually call the shots instead of just the boss saying this is how it goes, but now everybody can say something and you want to make sure that everybody is happy. So it gets a bit more challenging.
Okay. Any question? Yes, please. Yes.
Hi, Lars. My name is Christian, and my question is, do you use the artificial intelligence in some way in the development process? How do you use this technology? Because it's like one of the most popular nowadays, I think.
Yeah, thanks. I can actually see you because you're outside the camera frame.
Yeah.
But no, it's all right. Yeah, we are using, so I got your question right. Do you mean in the development process when we are developing the app, or if we are using AI within features of the app?
In all the cases, maybe to have a general answer, maybe in the development process and in develop all the features.
Right. So with the development process, we are definitely using AI there. So one of the most really helpful things that has happened to coding, at least for me, who is not a developer by training, so I'm kind of self-taught, is something like GitHub Copilot. There's also other things that are like free alternatives, but AI code assistants have really taken off and they can be hugely helpful. It's not at a stage yet, like I see lots of posts on social media, like developers are going to be not needed in like next year or something. It's not at that stage yet. Like you can tell the AI write an app that does this and it will do that. It will write like pieces. And even the pieces you have to kind of review yourself because it can easily hallucinate stuff or forget what it called a variable and then it just doesn't work. But it really helps getting things out quickly, like just something that's so minute that you don't even think about. For example, the web dashboard is built on React. And in React, you basically have like tiny little components everywhere. So a button is its own component, a drop-down is its own component, all that stuff. Whenever you declare such a component, the code is always going to be the same. Like you write some text and it's always, and then the content is dependent on what you want to do, but the outside is always going to be the same. And writing that a bunch of times is just tedious, but once the AI kind of picks up on what you want to do, it will suggest that, and you just type tab and it's there. It's all good. Now, what it also tends to do is suggest what your component is supposed to do. So maybe you want to create a button, and what the AI does is a checkbox. Now, you don't want to do that, so it doesn't always work perfectly. Like it would create a checkbox component, but you don't want a checkbox, you want a button. And in that case, it depends. If you know what you're doing, it's typically faster just to write it out yourself and use this auto-completion feature along the way. But you could also go ahead and tell the AI to write that button for you. Now, it will probably have the wrong color, the wrong shape, and not do what you want it to do, but it will help you get there. And I think that's the important piece to understand about AI, is that in almost all fields, it's a tool, and it's not a one bullet solution to absolutely everything. Like you still have to use it in the right way. Now, that was a bit long, but just briefly on the use of AI within the app. Currently, no, although it's a bit tricky because there has been an AI definition basically published by the EU. I haven't read the entire thing, but it basically calls systems AI that definitely are not the AI that we are thinking about right now. Like even finite state systems, like, I don't know, you have, if this condition happens, then this happens. With some like thinking and turning it around, you can basically make anything that this does AI. You can have, I don't know, a kid's toy where you put a ball in and it comes out at the bottom is technically then an AI because it, depending on this condition, this happens, you know? So it's a bit strange, but in the traditional sense, no, it's not using AI. Although that might change. I don't know what the colleagues at UPM are cooking up exactly, but with the recommendation system, and especially Victor being there on the forefront of AI, I can imagine that they will sprinkle some AI features in there to help tailor good recommendations to people.
Okay, thank you. One last question, short question. No? Okay, just, but very briefly, Lars, I have a question. Why did you choose iOS for the beta version rather than Android? Because in Spain, the share of people that is using iOS is very, very small regarding the people that are using Android. Why did you choose iOS for the beta version?
So yeah, for the initial testing version, just simply because we have two developers working with us that are like, one of them focused on Android, one of them on iOS, and the iOS developer was available earlier.
Okay.
That's simply the reason. We could have also gone with iOS, Android as the beta version, yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much. Just a big applause for Lars for being here today, Lars. Okay, so see you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Was a pleasure. And if any of you got curious about app development, don't be afraid to just approach it. Just try yourself out on it. Best way to learn.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.